and go ahead and bring us into the scene. Hello, how's it going? Caleta Scott is with an organization here called One Lagoon. Caleta, would you introduce yourself to the community here? Just what do you, who are you? What do you do for them?
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Caleta Scott, and who am I? I'm a cool lady who happens to have a really great job. And One Lagoon sounds real cool, but really, we're the government. We're the Indian River Lagoon. We are the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, an independent special district of the state of Florida. We don't do any regulation. We are science based and consensus building.
Very
And
cool.
that's one of the best things that I like about it because I do have a normal standard government background, and that's not as cool as this. So what I do for this organization, we are one of 28 national estuary programs in the country.
Whoa.
And yeah, yes, there are 28. There are a few more, there are more estuaries, but there are only 28 national estuary programs. And here in Florida, there are 3 to 4 of them on the East Coast. 40% of the East Coast is the Indian River Lagoon watershed. So
And
that
I
takes,
was looking up
Mhm.
One Lagoon's website, and actually I had a question about
Yes.
that. I saw something on the page that uh, made it seem to me like the organization also oversees other estuaries or other bodies of water. Did I read that wrong?
Yes, no, we are a part of like the National Estuary Program. There's an association of national estuary programs. We
Okay,
are one of them, and we are only responsible for the coordination and convening of partners in the Indian River Lagoon for
got
the
it.
for
Okay,
the for the restoration of the Indian
so
River
it's a
Lagoon.
branch of a greater organization then, of a larger
We are
organization.
we're we're an independent special district.
Okay,
So it's kind of funky because we were created by the Clean Water Act back in the 80s. And what that took was them deciding that estuaries are of national significance, right? So they then said we have to have certain organizations focused solely on that because if you just have your county work on it, there's so many other county issues that need to be taken care of, right? They can't focus solely on that. You have elected officials that have their own things going on. So a part of our council, it takes a part of our council is 5 counties from Martin County to Volusia, and each county sends a representative to sit on our council. And so
okay,
collectively they all make decisions in partnership with the Department of Environmental Protection and also the both water management districts, South Florida and St. John's. So it's a collaborative effort to manage it all. And it's our responsibility as a program and a council to make sure that everybody who's at the table sticks to the plan.
nice.
Yeah.
So,
And, yeah.
what's like an example of maybe a project you guys have undertaken, just to give people a tangible idea of like what an organization like this does?
Yeah. So I'll talk about one that we have going on right now.
And we
Um,
always love a good
and
success story too around here.
well, so the reason that I think this, and we're still in the works, but I'm calling it a success. We're in year 2. The fact that we were funded was a success. This was the first type of grant of this kind that we ever received, and this is a transformational habitat restoration grant, and that means that it was something that collectively it's transforming how the ecosystem works for the Indian River Lagoon. So we were awarded $9.4 million in 2023
That's
to
awesome.
take up. Yes, and we have 15 project sites in the Indian River Lagoon, also Mosquito Lagoon and Banana River Lagoon. And with that, it takes 9 project partners. So that's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. We've got Florida Fish and Wildlife, Riverside Conservancy, a couple colleges, UCF, Bethune-Cookman, Indian River State College. We've got Indian River Land Trust, St. Lucie County, and Florida Oceanographic. We've got some private industry involved
I
with Sea
actually
and
just watched a couple
Shoreline.
of panels that Florida Oceanographic put on. They were really interesting about shark bycatch.
Yes, yes. I sent that over to you one day, and I met the doctor who gave that
Oh,
talk.
Agemian, yeah.
Yes, he is
It
phenomenal.
turns out we have a
It's
couple mutual friends. I had no idea.
that night I actually told him I was going to be talking to you, and he was like, "That sounds cool," and I shared it with you. So maybe
I
you guys will
actually,
get
you know
together
what?
soon.
I should try to get. I have a couple of Thursdays this month that I don't have any interviews scheduled. I should reach out to him and see if we get him to talk about that study. That'd be really cool. You
Absolutely.
never know.
You know, if on Wednesday nights, Harbor Branch on campus has their own lecture series on
I did
Wednesdays at
not know that.
4:30. Yeah, everybody's got a lecture series. We'll talk a little bit more about our partners, but going back to
Heck
this
yeah.
project, there it takes a lot of partners, but to be able to corral and convene that many partners and with many different focuses, government, private industry, also conservancies who are dedicated to the work and keeping them focused on habitat restoration. Another great thing about this project is that we're impacting 9 different habitat types. So we've got seagrass, oyster reefs, living shorelines, mangroves, salt marshes, fish reefs, clams,
Yeah, from looking at it
wetlands,
at the surface, you'd
and
just be
fish
like, "Yep,
patterns.
that's a river or something." But I mean, there's several different biomes in there.
Absolutely. It's one thing that I give a lot of presentations, and for people who grew up here, and I didn't grow up here specifically. I kind of grew up in Miami and traveled every weekend here back and forth for my childhood.
Uh huh.
You call it the river. You just call it the river. But really
Right.
it's not a river at all.
Yeah.
And that's the funniest thing and that's why it's so important for, let's all learn some more because I didn't learn it until I started with this agency that it wasn't quite a river, right? It's a wind driven system that's got brackish water. There's a barrier island. And so those certain things make it a lagoon.
Right. It's like it's not quite a river. It's not a river at all. It's not quite the ocean, and that's just a sandbar over
Hmm.
there. But
Right.
it's
It's an
something else
estuary.
entirely.
An estuary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember thinking the Blue Lagoon from when I was a kid, like, that's not what this looks like at all. So I wouldn't think that. But, an estuary is partially enclosed and it's where the fresh water goes through and mixes with the salt water from the ocean. So that
Hmm.
makes it really special. And there's only so many of those in the United States. So we're lucky that we live in this beautiful place, I say.
Absolutely. One of our users, Sharks365, had a question for you.
Yeah.
Uh, they wanted to know if you knew that the Indian River Bay Lagoon is the most important nursery ground for bull sharks along the East Coast.
That's something that I recently learned at a talk. And what I love about this is that there are so many different specialties that you can get into. The Smithsonian has a inventory for all the species in the lagoon,
Oh,
and
cool.
it's fantastic. They're working on putting it online so everyone can see it and maybe
So
even
this is a
someone
this is
walk.
a tool they use, not like an exhibit at the aquarium.
No, it's a tool that, yeah, it was a project that they did to document all the species, and
Gotcha.
yeah, it's
I
online
would
at their
love
on
to
their
look at
site.
that when it's published.
Yes, and I could be wrong. It could be published already. Sometimes, um, things change so fast. And one interesting thing about our organization is because it takes a village to do the work. We only meet quarterly, so the governance of our organization is pretty unique.
Hmm.
Um, it's a management conference structure. So we have our board of directors who make the final decisions, but there's also a management board and a finance committee who make sure that we have enough money that all the millions of dollars that we manage and oversee are going to the right places, that we have enough in reserve to take care of all the projects that we fund. We've got a STEM advisory committee that's full of scientists that are making sure that we're sticking to the science.
That's
So
comforting.
it's very comforting because we can't go off of our emotions, right?
Right.
We have to go off of the science. We also have a citizens advisory committee, and that's full of people who are the educators, people who are boots on the ground, and that's even people who are working outside of science to make sure that everybody's at the table, right? So
Okay.
now we're getting input from what the community actually needs, and we're hearing from the scientists on what's going on. And then we also have a committee of people who are thinking about innovation and technology. So and put all those things together, it's a collaborative approach.
And so it
And
sounds like one lagoon is kind of just facilitating this, making sure all the moving parts are talking to each other and all that. Is that
yes,
accurate?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's it. And
So herding cats in science and the government.
ooh, so it's unique because, and I'll tell you this, out of the other national estuary programs that I'm familiar with, that I know of, we're one of the only ones who have this type of structure. And I
Mhm.
think that it shows in how many projects we're able to do with our partners. I want to say that in 2026, excuse me, 2025, I apologize. Yeah, 2024, that's we just did our annual report. Um, 270 projects were completed by our partners outside of the 385 that we did as an agency.
That's
So
awesome.
that's leveraging the work that we do. They're able to do so much more because of the projects that we're able to help fund.
Don't be alarmed. I'm going to do a little experiment just to see if I can change the scenery here real quick. Yeah,
Okay,
there
no
we go.
problem. Oh, yes, yes. I'm not cool like that. All you get is a blur at my house. Sorry, guys.
This was we were in Bimini shark diving
Ooh.
in November, and our last day there, I was just like, "This scene is gorgeous. I'm gonna take a 5 minute video of this and loop it on the background."
Oh, yes. I'll have to find someone to do that for me. But,
But yeah, so
um,
actually, that might be a good transition. So their
yeah.
question, the follow up question, to that was, what have any of the product projects that you guys have done or coordinated had anything to do specifically with sharks? That's a good way to tie it into the channel.
You know what? I don't know specifically, but I will. I'm going to do a quick search, and I will come back to that as soon as I do some
Yeah,
looking.
very cool.
Not in my immediate, not to my immediate knowledge, but I
I
will
would
look that
argue
up.
honestly that like anything to do with improving the water quality or availability of food or just the ability of it to be a sustainable habitat for fish is technically doing something for the sharks.
Well, one of the most important things we need to do is improve the water quality,
Yeah.
and
I
that
feel like that
is
is at the forefront of everyone's mind when you're looking at the Indian River Lagoon.
that's one of our number one goals to attain and maintain water quality level
In
that
fact,
it's
I have
improved.
some drone footage I took from the St. Lucie inlet
Hmm.
that is rather wild. If you want to take a look at that, I'll dig it up while we're chatting here.
Yeah, I'm looking
That
at
was
my.
last year when they were doing one of the dumps from Lake Okeechobee, and I mean, it looks
Mhm.
like neon green.
I moved here. I moved to Fort Pierce in 2015, and right when I got here, there was a harmful algal bloom
Hmm.
in Stewart, and it was like green, neon green waters, and people were getting sick, and it was like a major thing, and I had
Yeah.
never heard of anything like that before.
I remember
That's right.
around the same time we
Mhm.
had a couple of those warnings that were talking about like sewage runoff warnings, don't go sandbarring and stuff like that.
Yeah, and coordination is really important because if when we communicate with the Army Corps of Engineers, when those engineers talk to the scientists, it may take a while for all the, for the translation of language to work, coupled
Uh,
with people who are who advocate for for the environment. You have to give them a hand clap for advocating it and getting things like the releases to be stopped
Yeah,
from Lake
absolutely. And I think it was just
Arnett.
last year, or maybe it was 2024, but I think it was last year, where the Army Corps of Engineers for the first time like acknowledged the environmental impact, that there was even an environmental impact of the lock system around Okeechobee. And that's awesome. Did One Lagoon play any part in any of that?
We are the government, and we don't do any advocacy.
Okay. So
So
not
we
the
didn't play a
advocacy. Oh,
part in
right.
it.
I
But
got you.
one way that we do play a part in it is that we educate our citizenry. We support our partners who are educating our citizenry, and what it takes to do things like that is an educated citizenry. So I think one of the most important things as a government that we can do is make sure that people know from a from science based information what is correct. Now, we I'll say this, and this is more, I'm taking off my government hat a little bit, putting it to the side. For me, as a citizen, just a regular person who loves the environment herself, it's hard because these things, it didn't happen overnight, right? And some of the decisions that were made by the government got us here, right? And so we have to look at the things we did in the past so we can make sure that we don't do them again,
Right.
right? And that takes having everybody at the table. We have people who've been fishing in the lagoon, since the 30s and 40s, and fifth generation fishermen, sitting at the table, who are not scientists, so to speak. They didn't go to college for that,
But
but they know the
they're the people
lagoon.
with the experience who are seeing it
They're the
every day.
people with the experience. And you
Yeah.
know how long it took the science community to say, hey, come on, fishermen?
I can imagine. Yeah.
I think, and it maybe doesn't even happen still in all the places. Um, but it does take that coordinated effort that we have the opportunity to do to make sure everybody's at the table and utilizing that same information and hearing it all, you know?
Right. Yeah. No. Circulate science communication is definitely something that needs to be focused on a little bit more in a lot of fields. That's why it's kind of exciting for me to see this little corner of it that we have going on Twitch, doing as well as it does. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about like. Actually, we'll do a little shout out for one right now. Science
Okay.
Streams is one that's done a lot to help me understand how this platform works. They do stuff like microscopy and you know, just like imagine you're watching Bill Nye the Science Guy and any interesting scientific paper comes out or like new study on something and you want it broken down. There's people like this doing that on this platform and
Yes.
turning it from this thing that was created to enjoy video games as a community into a educational platform now where people are
Right.
actually interested in coming and learning how things work from I hesitate to use the word expert because this is actually like a joke between me and my friends on this platform is they're like,
Okay.
oh, are like if I say something in their chat, like four people would be like, oh, a resident shark expert has shown up. I'm like, no, 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 no. Those only exist on Shark Week.
Right.
That's a
Right.
rule at our house during Shark Week. Is if they say shark expert, you have to drink. So
Uh-oh.
because that's not a real thing. You can't be an expert on something you don't know anything about. But you know what I mean,
Right.
like. And like you said,
Yeah.
that a person maybe it's just like a fisherman or somebody who is out there every day seeing it,
Yeah.
hearing it from those firsthand accounts as well as like educators and people in academia, I think has a lot of benefit to it.
Well, I just went to a conference in Gainesville called People in Nature,
Oh, I've heard of
and
that. How was it?
it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And it was the first one, 2 days. It was supposed to be one day, but with the response they got, they had to, in order to fit it all in, they moved it to 2 days. But it was still scientific, because what happened on day one was people were sharing how they communicate science to community and the success that they've had. And then on day two, we started to connect a little bit more and talk about some of the difficulties. And I think some of the biggest takeaway was know your role, right? And that the scientist has a role in society. And if you're the researcher, be the researcher. If you're the facilitator, being the communicator, be that. But don't try to be all things because you have to be open to taking yourself out of being the expert in the room, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, when you go somewhere, you're like, "Hi, I'm Caleta. I'm everything Indian River Lagoon." I am not. I'm a cool girl who has a great job, and I work with some really outstanding scientists who are dedicated to this work. Let me tell you about the good stuff they're doing, and I get a chance to break it down to children. I get a chance to break it down to scientists who are out of the game. I go to yacht clubs and hang out with those guys and talk to
Hey,
them
if any
about
of them
what's
ever
important
express
to
interest in
them.
wanting to learn about sharks, let me know.
I will. There's some opportunities with students, and I just I'm not big on social media, but personally I'm not big on social media, but
I'm not either, but we're
being
trying.
you got to try. And but there are influencers that really can make an impact. There's this young person named Kid Flames who's working in the Everglades, this little black kid with gold teeth, and he's working with amphibians. It's about to be a little young doctor, and because he got such a response, he's now going to schools and talking to them about, like, hey, I just like being outside, and I learned about something, and I had a question, and then I just asked the doctor, and now look at me, I'm studying this, in the Everglades.
And
How
see, what's
cool
so
is
cool
that?
about that too is not just that they're doing that, but that with the media we have available to ourselves now. Like for
Yes.
example, I'll do a video of one of my shark dives or something, and it's
Hmm.
not just yes, here is some interesting content, but people will see that kid's passion for what he does and feel that excitement. They'll vibe off of him, for lack of a better way to put it,
Yeah.
and that I feel more than anything inspires others to follow suit and go try to better themselves or pursue a career like that, where they might not have before when they see how passionate somebody is about it.
Right. Right. I get most of my compliments on my passion,
Hmm.
because ideally I want people to know better so they can do better. And it's as simple as that, because when I know better, I do better. I've told a story from when I was a young kid. I was maybe 12. I grew up in Miami, in the hood, and but I also had a lot of access and experience in Miami, of course, right? And I was about to litter somewhere in Miami Beach, not in my neighborhood. I was about to litter, and a woman saw me, and she looked at me, and she shook her head, and I was like, and I was upset that this woman saw me and did this, and then I was ashamed, and at that moment, changed. And I wasn't a litterer. I wasn't, I wasn't, I was a good kid. It was like in the moment, it was something I was going to do. But that moment, look at me. I'm I'm 48 now, and I'm talking about this.
Yeah, it
It
made
was
an
a
impression on you.
it made an impression on me, and that's something that I've advocated for, cleaning up your neighborhood, since I was in college, and probably before that. You know, and that's all. That's where my passion started, and wanting to be outside is cleaning up trash. And then I started noticing all the things, and realized that I grew up around a beautiful environment here in Fort Pierce and in Miami and the Everglades and Key West. I had a lot of access to beautiful things. And when I went to Georgia, I lived in Georgia for about 15 years, raising my daughter. That wasn't the same. And so when I moved back, I was able to appreciate it a lot more. And I wanted to learn everything about stormwater. What's this stormwater project here? What about these bricks? What do these do? What's the difference of these bricks from here? And just asking questions. And then I like to let people know, you better ask a question if you don't know. And
Yeah,
that's how you get to knowing more. And then you'll be surprised how many people are willing to share with you what they know if you ask them.
a good friend of
You
mine,
know?
he is a scientist. The one we just shouted out a minute ago is a scientist. Studies insects and their genetics. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing he likes to say a lot, and I'm a fan of, is he'll say, okay, well, what is a scientist? Like define a scientist. And he says, I
Mm-hmm.
think the definition is just a person who stays curious. You know what I mean? If you continue to ask questions and continue to want to understand why things work. And a lot of people, according to them, in that field will lose that curiosity. So, who's contributing more to
Mm-mm.
science? A person who's doing the same lab job that they're not even interested in anymore, or a person who's actually feeding that curiosity and trying to understand how the world works? I think it's an interesting thought.
It is, and I'll tell you what, those scientists have made a term for it. They're just calling it now social science,
Mm,
right? So we're social scientists when we're dealing with the place of learning about the environment, right? The people aspect of it, and how we get people to feel, because that's what it is. It's just interpretation,
yeah,
right? Like if I can convey a message to you about why we should care about the Indian River Lagoon, maybe I'm going to do that through Lagoon yoga with some kids, right? And it's fun, and they get into crab pose, and we get into oyster pose, and we do all this, and they remember
that's
that,
fun.
you know. However, you can communicate um, something interesting, something that may stick in someone's brain, is, I think it's key. And I'm going to make sure I share that anecdote you just shared with my science friends. I love them so much, but I definitely want them to kind of look around sometimes, right? Like
Yeah, I
just
really like take
look
it in and
around
ask
sometimes.
questions.
Yeah.
So, speaking of questions, what type? of what are some of the projects that One Lagoon is really focused on right now? What is at the forefront?
Well, I was talking about that 9.4 million transformational habitat grant, but we were able to get that because we have focused heavily in the past 5 to 7 years on seagrass.
Yeah.
Seagrass,
If I had to just pull out of a hat, what I would guess are like the top
mhm,
issues around here are things like, well, obviously coral reef loss is more of an outside the IRL
more
thing,
ocean.
but yeah, so water quality from
Hmm.
pollution from the rivers as well as land, and I guess more of an issue further south, but actual like pumping of not fully treated water into the waterways, and
Yes.
seagrass loss would be right there underneath it.
Yeah.
I
I
kind of
think
lump all of that one into pollution.
Well, it's all pollution, and I sometimes answer this question in my presentations. To people are like, "Well, what's the big problem? What's the worst thing?" And I don't like to just stick it to them and say it's people, it's us, it's development. But that's kind of the gist of it. But when it comes to seagrass, the goal is to bring it back so it can improve the water quality.
Hmm.
It's such an important thing. And here in the Indian River Lagoon, we have all 7 types of seagrass that are in Florida in the lagoon. And so if the seagrass it dies, it lets us know that the lagoon isn't healthy. And if the seagrass dies, then some of our friends die as well. And there's a big, huge manatee mortality event
Yeah, especially with
about
the
in
cold
2015.
snap we had.
Yeah, that was a pretty wild snap that we had. And we've had here at the Manatee Center. Um, it's funny because it used to be called the Manatee Observation and Education Center, but we kind of changed it because you don't really go there to see them anymore. But occasionally they're there,
Yeah.
and a lot of the staff members are able to point them out. And if you're ever in Fort Pierce and you drive by the Manatee Center, there's a white flag out. That means that there's manatees there.
I didn't
Uh,
know that. I've driven
that's
past it so
something.
many times. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, right now there's construction going on, so you can't drive by right in
Okay.
front of it. But that's one of the things that happens there. But when those things happen, people pay attention. So nobody wants manatees to die. So that was kind of like one of the biggest things that was the catalyst
Hmm.
for people saying we've got to fix the seagrass. But the scientists were like, "Duh, we've got to fix the seagrass because of
Yeah.
water water quality." And but it provides shelter, um, and shoreline protection. What we're doing right now is we have a 5 partner seagrass restoration network, and that is with Brevard Zoo, FOS, FAU Harbor Branch. There's one more, the Environment Marine Discovery Center, and
Okay.
all of them are planting and growing seagrass. So they all have they have like these mega tanks, huge tanks planting different types of seagrass. And then we're going out at some point, they're planting the seagrass. Then after
Are
that,
they
we've
all
gone
doing that
out
independently?
independently and together, discussing it, recording it, um, and just kind of learning from each other together. And what we've learned is that the conditions up north are definitely different than down south. And it brought us to where we are with this larger product project, because what we learned is you can't just plant seagrass. You can
Right.
plant
And why is
seagrass
that?
if you want to, but we need to have biodiversity. You've got to have the clams there. You need to have some oysters there. You need to plant some mangroves. There's a whole environment that takes different species so that it can work harmoniously. What I love about that is the same for our people too, right? So when we think about science, we can all really connect to it because it just, to me, it makes sense, right?
Hmm.
We need everybody we need everybody here for things to work harmoniously. You can't just focus on one. We've got to figure out how we can grow everything together.
Right. And with when we're kids, when we're little, when they explain like what a food chain is to us, and you
Hmm.
imagine a lot of people, I think, keep us into their adulthood this rigid system of like everything goes from this one building block straight up the line. But it's really, once especially when you get into marine stuff, you really start to realize it's this convoluted web, of things. And so there's so many factors, I'm sure, that the seagrass depend on, like salinity, temperature, minerals in the water. I mean, obviously the presence of different types of pollutants. I'm
Yes.
sure there's species that have to be there just for them to be able to exist. Species that use them for habitat, species that use them for food. So many different pieces to that puzzle.
And let's say that one of those species is not doing so well because of that or for another reason. We won't know until we test it 5 different times in 5 different ways. It may take that fifth experiment to find out, oh, we should have added this, or we should have noticed that this wasn't present at this time. I can say, and this goes off, but we're talking about these lizards. This is an experiment that was going on at the FOS, the agamas,
Okay.
right? What happens if we put the lizards with the iguanas with the agamas? Like everybody's like, they're invasive, they're invasive. Well, they may, you know, not be invasive. They just not be. They just might be non-native. And so I'm always kind of sitting in the corner listening to the scientists talk about the different things and notice how they're just kind of talking in circles. It's all the same thing.
And
We've
just
got,
just to clarify for anybody who might not
yes.
be familiar, so that there
Ooh,
is a difference between invasive and non-native.
yes.
But for something to be invasive, does that require that part of that picture be that they are damaging the ecosystem?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So do we know if the agamas with the red heads are, you know, eating the food and taking away from the regular iguanas? We don't know
And
that
just for
necessarily.
anybody who isn't sure what we're talking about right now, this is a red-headed
Yes.
agama. They are all over my backyard.
Yeah, they are.
We've been very
They're all.
fortunate, though, that they haven't made it into the attics yet. They're apparently all up in the eaves of my neighbor's house.
Oh, wow.
I didn't
I
know
haven't
that was a thing. I think maybe squirrels probably made the hole and they just followed the way in.
for shelter, but I just wanted I threw that out there because it made me laugh because that wasn't a question that they had even asked.
Yeah,
Everyone just assumed for the past few years that they were invasive, and at FOS they're studying and that they're not quite invasive. They're just also here, non-native. You know,
that seems like a hard one to quantify too, because like if one of their biggest impacts, the argument would be the amount of bugs they eat, right? And is that robbing other species of a food source? And like, how do you even test for that? Like that?
they've, they've got like little tubs and they've got
Yeah,
some lizards.
that would
Yeah,
take
it's
years to
ongoing,
analyze all
right?
that
It's
data.
ongoing, it's ongoing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like you said, staying curious and not just saying, oh yeah, of course that's it.
Yeah, it's
It's just
science
naming
is
it
not
correctly.
saying we're going to go set out to determine this one thing and then we're done. It's we're going to ask a question, try to answer it with this experiment, and now see what other questions that raises or what other things we should be thinking about. And
Yeah,
that's cool
that's
that
the whole.
there's a
It's
group like
cool.
this to kind of keep everybody wrangled and focused on those goals and that.
And educating the elected officials so that they make decisions in their municipalities that mirror that, right? Because you don't want to have your Indian River Lagoon here and then vote in something that is counterproductive to all the work that we're doing and the $9.4 million that we got and the $300,000 grant that your city just applied for septic to sewer, right? We also, going back to projects, we have funded a number of municipalities in doing septic to sewer projects because we want to make sure that many municipalities can as possible help their residents pay for some of that cost, take care of some of that cost.
Splish
It
I
splash,
can
you're
pay
off
for
apologize
the
for the
in
extra.
trash.
interruption.
Uh-huh.
There's a little thing playing really quick. I
Yeah.
had to ban somebody. That little
Splash.
silly video plays whenever I have to ban someone. Someone's been
Oh,
very
why did you ban
inappropriate
them?
in this one and the last interview stream I did. It's a long story.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No,
That's
no, I apologize. We're all good though.
part of the game. Um, I kind of lost my.
I know. It's it plays a whole silly song. It was just it was I changed the lyrics to splish splash. You know,
It's okay.
I know it's very distracting. So we were talking about we were talking about
making sure
how
that our elected officials are educated on all of
yes,
these things
and
that
I
are
am
going
for
on.
one a big fan of educating our elected elected officials. We need more of that in the world today.
It's important. It's important. It's they change so much, so it's a busy job. And but I'll say this, and in our IRL council, there's been some pretty static members that have been a part of it for 20, 30 years. We have professionals that have worked, at the DEP and water
Yeah.
management districts. So we have some very sage advice, and then we have people who are actively working every day that are sitting there listening to the work, listening to the projects that we're funding, listening to the health of the lagoon reports. One I like to shout out the fact that our website is a little improved, and you can go on there and see our previous meetings. You can look at minutes. You can look at many different reports that we have, also different webinars and podcasts. But we try to make sure that there are a lot of topics that are covered, and that we can get that message out to whomever we need to, and we'll show up for your municipality. I've had invitations to talk to home HOAs, because they're fighting about a stormwater pond that they think that is dirty for one reason, and
Hmm.
the staff at the city is saying this, and they're fighting, and they're like, "Can you come in and be neutral?" And I'm like, "Huh, sure, sure, we can be neutral,
So
but what we're
is
going to do,
mediation and that sort of thing, is that something you guys often have to do?
it's I wouldn't say mediation. We're really, science based and
Yeah.
consensus building. So what we go back to is the work that we funded and the work that our partners are doing in the lagoon,
Hmm.
and that's the science that we have, and we have a long record of it. And our partners, they're the authorities, but they're the ones who are funding us. But we pretty much um, hear from the community, and the community includes all the stakeholders. What needs to be done, it's voted on, and then we fund those projects. So, and everybody is involved in that process, from our staff members with getting the word out, with communicating about grants that are available, because most people didn't know in St. Lucie County that this agency was a thing. Most people
Yeah, I
don't know.
didn't. Of
Yeah.
course, to be fair, I think when we met at the what was the event? It was at the Manatee Center, I think.
The science festival, or
Yes, Manatee
one of those
Fest is what
things.
they called it.
Manatee Fest. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was the first I'd heard of One Lagoon, and I think Orca as well at the same
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for the subscription, Tax Art. I really appreciate the support. Thank you.
Well, I was so happy to meet you, because I think one thing that made me feel a little warm and fuzzy. I don't get a bunch of warm and fuzzies at my job all the time, but it was great because when I work with a lot of scientists, I'm kind of just looked at it as like some girl who's not a scientist, but I'm also someone who um, understands what they're doing. I can't regurgitate it. I haven't memorized it because it's not my discipline. I have a business degree and an economics degree in public relations,
Yeah,
right?
my
So,
background's in video game development.
right, right. And so what I appreciated was the message that you had, and sometimes I need to hear that in my head over and over again, is that it's okay that you don't have, that you're not that type of scientist. I'm a social scientist, right? But
Right.
I can communicate with people, and I really get people to care.
Right.
I can.
It would be one thing if like people like myself were out here doing science communication and just speaking our opinions and telling lies, and not
Right.
fact checking the information and telling people to take it for the word, But it you don't need per se. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with choosing a course in academia, choosing a path in academia.
I want them
That's
to, I need them
necessary
to.
too, but
Hmm.
you don't necessarily need a pile of fancy degrees to be able to read and understand data from other studies and make reasonable inferences from that, and just help spread the word about studies that other people have done. To understand and communicate science, and I think that is something I like to see growing a lot. Like on Twitch, we've got a bunch of new science education streamers that I didn't know about
Hmm.
as recently as like before the panel I did at TwitchCon in October.
Oh wow.
For example, I'm going to give a shout out to this guy, Baron of Bile, studies crocs in the Everglades.
Oh,
We just got to meet up a month ago at a music festival. That was a good time. But he also does like microscopy. They're looking at water bears under a microscope and stuff. So yeah, people. I think that holds people back a lot from doing that sort of public outreach and science
it
communication.
does.
Is that thought that
Hmm.
like I'm not enough because I don't have XYZ credential or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. It's a, we all have a little bit of imposter syndrome, what they call it, right? But what I'm going to say is that the science community has, and in many areas, and I call it science community has gone back to the indigenous cultures, like native tribes, to ask them, hey guys, I'm having a hard time. How did you live with the land so peacefully? That there's literally, it's called traditional ecological knowledge.
Right, like
And
looking at
so,
things like traditional medicines and seeing like, hey, why did you use this herb for that or whatever?
right,
Like,
right,
maybe there
right.
was
And
something
how,
to that. Imagine.
imagine we didn't, we only took what we needed and we love it and honor it. That's a different approach than we have right now, right? And so the science community is saying, how can we start to kind of put the brakes on how fast we're going this way and try to kind of get back to creating the environments that are natural as it should be. And it's hard when we have a lot of urban runoff and we're growing cities and building lots of buildings. It's hard to then want to go back and kind of live with the land.
Yeah,
So that's why it's important to make sure everyone's educated before we vote into X, and invite a lot of a lot of growth to your community. I love Port St. Lucie. I love how Port St. Lucie has managed their growth over the years. I'll tell you what, I didn't know what Port St. Lucie was when I moved here in 2015, and that's just because I'm from Port Pierce and it wasn't really well populated, right? But bam, post COVID, everybody's here. And how many people who have moved maybe from South Florida or from somewhere else don't know that they're a part of this watershed, right?
exactly.
They,
Yeah, and it's
they,
so important, especially with so many people moving to the state as a whole. I mean,
mhm.
it's. I feel like everybody should get a pamphlet when they show up to Florida. Be like,
Right,
living with the environment is a huge theme here, because we don't have really that much land, and a ton of it is coastline,
right,
and it's so ingrained in Floridians to coexist with nature that yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people aren't able to wrap their head around, but it's crucial here, and especially with part of having so much coastline and having our estuary systems and things like that is our impact directly affects stuff in a very noticeable way. Like for example with pollution, how it affecting the grass, etc. So yeah, I think that sort of availability of information and ease of being able to educate yourself about these environments for people that are moving in is crucial.
yeah. I encourage because I didn't always work for the government. I was a free person working in society. And once I started to work for the government, I was like, you know what? Man, they owe me a lot of stuff, don't they? And that was my approach, right? I was like, there's a lot of things that I know they're supposed to do, and I want them to do those things. And when I worked there, that was my approach. Aren't you supposed to do this? Isn't this department responsible for this? Aren't we doing this? Aren't you guys talking to these guys? I found out they weren't talking to those guys.
Yeah,
This
usually
department, this department was talking to this department, and they didn't talk to the
tech
other
was
one
the
until they
same way.
needed
If it
to.
makes you feel better, the two hands weren't talking, and yeah, it was bad.
and and not realizing that I'm pulling my hair out. I quit during the Great Resignation, and when this opportunity came up, and I realized that it was collaborative and it was not regulatory, that really perked me up. And then especially that we were able to kind of be in our communities and make a difference and educate the school board. and educate the Boys and Girls Club and educate the city commissioners that I'm already friends with, right? So it was a nice way to kind of bump into people that I already knew from another world or another approach, very similar, but it's that passion and that that inquisitiveness and that curiosity. I think
Absolutely.
that
And I think that kind of like public outreach stuff is awesome. I'm such a huge fan of that because
well,
when you're
mhm,
putting yourself out there like that, or when an org is putting themselves out there doing this sort of stuff, you know that everybody that shows up is genuinely interested in the subject matter, and
yes,
that's really valuable. And that can immediately also give you an idea for how much a community is interested in that, and then you can give them whatever information it is they need, or
in the
that's
different
really cool.
ways. Because some communities, storytelling is a good way to get the message across. Some communities like art. When I was at the People in Nature conference, there were many different ways that they connected old fishermen to the old working waterfronts,
Hmm.
right? And what a great way is listening to an old guy talk about when he was fishing back in the 50s and how seagrass, he could see it from here to there, and it was full up. You're sitting there like, wow, I can't imagine that. And now you're feeling good. And now when you leave, you're gonna go look in the sea, look at over in the lagoon and see no seagrass.
Yeah,
And then
and
maybe
my
you're gonna
worry is
call.
always that people are going to see that and immediately think it's hopeless. But like they see how dramatic the decline is from then to now. But so, is there something you do to that helps remind people how quickly the waterways can rebound when we actually give them the ability to? Are there any like success stories or anything like that that you show people?
Well, I think it's really letting them know that we have to let it get back to as natural as possible so we can let the lands and waters generate the habitat and the aesthetic and recreational values that they're supposed to, right? Because that's why people
Hmm.
come here, right? And it didn't happen overnight. So when we talk about success stories, it's every project is a success, right? Anytime we're improving water quality, anytime we're removing nutrients, anytime we're, educating some, maybe teaching some kids how to fish is a success because now there's somebody who there now you've increased the amount of people who care about the lagoon and what's going on. I was just about to talk about a specific project that we have. It's more of a living lagoon friendly.
Okay.
We want people to. It's called the 10 R's. It's kind of fun, but it's a lot of them. But it's kind of like it's your responsibility, and I think that's one of those hard ones, right? Like it's our responsibility to know.
You might want to hold that thought. My spidey
Okay.
senses are tingling, and something
Yes.
something very disruptive is about to happen. But it's a good
Oh
thing.
no.
No,
How
no,
can
no.
I?
Twitch is all about fun disruptions from the community.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good.
And somebody I follow is about to bring. Whenever we're done streaming, we
Hmm.
bring our community to another streamer. It's a way of networking and supporting our friends.
Yes.
It's called a
Yes.
raid, and I have just noticed that somebody with a rather large community is about to bring theirs over here in like three, two, one.
Okay.
So I didn't want you to be alarmed when that happened. But there we are. Hello, Danny and Duza and Paleontologizing. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for the raid.
Woo.
We have a special guest tonight. We are interviewing Caleta Scott from One Lagoon, which is a government organization for helping preserve the Indian River Lagoon here in Southeast Florida. But I'll let her explain what they do again here in a moment. Cleta, no pressure, but our friend Danny here just brought a whole lot of friends in.
Hi everyone. I don't feel any pressure.
Good, good. No, you're doing
Welcome to
great.
the pod.
So, just briefly, like if we were to dial back to the beginning
Yes. Mhm.
of our conversation, what is the high
Yes.
level of what One Lagoon does?
Well, the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program is an independent special district of the state. And we were put together to convene our science friends along with our elected officials to govern what happens and what's funded to protect the Indian River Lagoon. We are science based, consensus building, community driven, results driven, and most importantly, non regulatory. So I work with a lot of scientists, a lot of community members, a lot of elected officials, and we work together to ensure that the science is the number one thing that leads the work that's being done.
So the data can speak for itself, and you try to. It sounds
Yes.
like you go to great lengths to try and
Well,
facilitate collaboration without bringing bias to the table.
yes, we have a 10-year comprehensive plan. Um, and that's a hard thing to pull together. And we are about to
It's a long
review it
one.
again, I think, in next year. And every year we have a work plan that we have to submit to the EPA. And so we ensure that all the projects that we do match the plan, what we said we were going to do. And so that's a concerted effort by our staff and by the science community that we work with. It's a lot of fun. But the most another important thing is we fund a lot of projects. So it's we receive funding so that we
I
are
promise I'm
like
not
a
actually like crying at the mention of the
oh,
EPA,
it's
which I
okay.
feel like I could,
I'm
but I actually
crying at
had
all.
something in my eye. Sorry, we're not going to get into politics right
No,
now.
we won't get into politics. That's one of the, like I said, it's one of the best things. We do have to deal with them, but our
Yeah.
role is to educate them. And, we have a vision for a healthy ecosystem and a healthy community. And we feel that once we educate our citizenry and, get our science and everybody up on the same page, that even though it didn't happen overnight, we are taking the steps to ensure that the lagoon is protected and safe for future generations. Every
Yeah.
project matters.
I think it's. I think for one, it's really cool just to see even the government take such an interest in in going so far out of the way to put something like One Lagoon in place. I think that speaks very loudly of recognition of a body of government of the importance of a certain ecosystem or a series
Yes.
of ecosystems in this case.
Yeah. And but even still, that came because of the people, because people fought for that, right? Because people were educated and people, let their voice be known. And I think it's really important that the more when you know better, you do better.
So,
And
really, really
mhm,
quick, I wanted to just recognize the raiders that came in. This is Paleontologizing. He's another one of those educational streamers I was telling you about. Danny
yes,
Anduza is an actual dinosaur paleontologist, and they'll do like education with 3D printed fossils, changing them out in the office all the time, and actually go out in the field and do like live dinosaur digs out in the desert. It's some of the coolest stuff you've ever seen,
I just
and
looked it up, so
absolutely
I'm
been
gonna be
like
checking it
paving the
out.
way for educational streamers on this platform. So thank you for everything, Danny, and thank you so much for the support. But he had a question on here. So he's actually planning a visit to come out to Florida, I believe in
Hmm.
May, is what he
Okay.
said, I think. Specifically to come and meet with some people to learn about leatherback sea turtles.
Oh, I
So he
know
wanted to
just some
know
people.
if any work that you've done or One Lagoon has done has been anything centered around sea turtles, or have you done any work with marine turtle researchers specifically?
We have one of our partners in water research. They have an office. They work here and around us. They just did our What's Up in the Watershed webinar. They have been doing sea turtle research for the past 15 to 20 years. And they work with St. Lucie County and also Palm Beach County as
Okay.
well. And they actually help us put on an event called Youth Driven Cinema, um, which is a really cool event. It's an environmental documentary film festival for kids
And this is
where
where?
it's going to be at Stewart on Earth Day at the Lyric Theater, and St. Lucie and Martin County students from K through
Hold on, I'm
12
going
are
to that. What was
invited.
it called?
It's called, so if you look up Youth Driven Cinema, the organization is In Water Research Group, In Water Research Group,
Okay.
IRG. This is about the 10th year they've done it, but this is the third year that they've invited St. Lucie County to the party. And it's the cutest thing because Kate, the elementary students, they have,
Found it.
a different lens on their films. And then the high school students are making like some badass movies, and also creating
Kalita,
habit
do
change.
please keep the language family friendly around here. I'm just, I'm just messing with you. No,
Oh my
I
gosh.
do try to, but it's not like a hard and
Me
fast rule.
too. Oh my gosh.
I just,
Oh,
I just felt like pulling your leg a little bit.
you did. You did. I'm sorry,
We
everyone.
do try to keep it family friendly,
Me
but it's not
too.
like a hard and fast rule. I just want any because there is an age limit on you know how old people have to be to use this platform. But I like to at least keep it possible for like if somebody has their toddler running or something. You know.
Yes, yes. Well, I think
Anyway, I
um,
hope I didn't derail you too bad.
no, no, no. I think it's really um, a a great program to see all the young people put their lens on why it's important to protect the future. And then also to have the scientists in the room watching these young students tell them why it's important. It's just a wonderful feel good moment. And In Water Research Group is the one who created that event
That's
and
so
puts it
cool.
on for us. So on top of the work that they do, they go into schools, they travel all around the country, and their home base is here, educating our citizens. So I love them. In Water Research Group.
Yeah, that's
If
so
you,
cool because
yeah,
I'll bring it up here for a sec on the screen while we're looking at this. Because like for a lot of environmentalists, myself included,
yes,
we learn about these things through documentaries, or maybe we saw one that brought a certain issue to our attention. Like for me,
mhm,
it was seeing specifically shark water. Was the first one that brought to my attention just how bad shark finning had gotten.
yes,
And I didn't know that previously. That was the point at which I finally said, I'm going to go get certified and get out there and start doing stuff. I got my scuba cert and all that stuff. Because like the whole reason I didn't go into shark research or marine biology was just because I was terrified of the water. I didn't want to get in the water or be around any of these animals. But I realized I wasn't afraid of the animals because the more I learned about them, I was like, oh, that's it. Like none of these other like crazy sea monsters are out there. You know, like
right,
whatever my 5-year-old mind could cook up. I realized I was afraid of what I couldn't see. You know what I mean? And so not actually what's down there. So when I can see, I've got my mask and all that, and there's good visibility. I'm in heaven. It was
yes,
just you're having your head above water, looking at the reflections of the light across the top of the water. You have no idea what's going on down there. That's terrifying.
hmm
But anyway, that's another rabbit hole. But my point is that for me, it was documentaries like that one and a few others that made me go, "Oh, this is worse than I thought." And also a bit of it too is noticing the passion of those people in those documentaries, and then you become interested because like, why do they care about this so much? Maybe I
right,
should be caring about this as well. And sometimes by the end of the film, that is the case. So to see a youth driven thing like this, like facilitating kids making documentaries about that stuff, that's introducing them to that concept very early
yeah,
on. I think that's amazing.
yes, it is. And then also just letting them know that their voice matters.
Yeah.
And there's cash prizes too. So
What?
there's cash prizes? Yeah,
And
first
is it
place
what
is
age? This is okay.
$400.
Elementary, middle, high school. Are
Hmm.
they all
And they
together? Or are they in categories?
each categories,
Gotcha.
elementary, middle, and high school, and each category has a first, second, and third place.
That is really neat. I may actually have to attend this. That's neat.
That's something that we fund. We fund the cash prizes for that because we think that that's a really important initiative to support. And my goal is getting as many kids and young people to submit videos. So if you're a St. Lucie County or Martin County young person,
Yeah,
it's a
and
great
then the
opportunity.
people who are actually doing like nature or environmental related stuff. That's, I mean, at that point, you've essentially created a future science communicator. That is a wonderful thing. I think that's one thing that like we talk about shark ecotourism here a lot
Yes.
because that's something
Hmm.
I participate in to be able to get
Right.
footage.
Hmm.
It is a topic that like people will approach it from either side of the fence, thinking, well, it's not a good idea to be like getting these animals used to human interaction, or they look at it from maybe the other side of the coin where we don't really have enough evidence to show that that's the case, but we do know that allowing this and facilitating this ends up protecting the sharks, like it did with them banning shark fishing in Bahamas,
Right.
and
Hmm.
creates additional voices for conserving that resource. Uh, so I completely derailed my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I left it back there like 30 seconds
Well,
ago.
I think
we were
it's
talking
just
about the documentary filmmaking, and yeah,
well,
I had to go on a detour to relate it.
it's okay, but it's just relating the message of like it's in all of us, right? Like you went from being afraid that you didn't even take a move to go into this career, and now look at you. All you had to do is learn a little something about it, and I think that's
Oh, that was my point. Was that so when these people are getting introduced to that concept so young
yes,
of
right,
creating media, and they realize how powerful it is, that if you can just reach one other person and inspire them to
yes,
do something that does some good for that issue or that animal or that environment, whatever, they very quickly realize how powerful that can be. And that's really cool. Well, the reason I tie it into the shark ecotourism thing is you see a lot of people that end up doing their first dive or snorkel,
hmm
uh, are just like addicted after that. And the next thing you know, you'll see them on Instagram posting videos of sharks like every week, or dolphins or whatever turtles, whatever their thing is. And I just think that's wonderful. So the fact that they're actually facilitating a whole organization like this for people to make these films is so cool.
it is very cool, and it's well attended, and it's families where there's a red carpet, kids get flowers, and it's a real heartwarming event, but also it sends a message that I think it sends a message to a lot of the elected officials that we like to invite, that there's a generation paying attention, right? And so, the decisions that you make, you should be mindful that there are young people watching, right? And I
Yeah,
think
you're gonna have a lot of eyes on you when these kids grow
there's a
up.
lot of absolutely and I commend Martin County, especially in Martin County, their science for their elementary students is at an environmental science center. So you're at your regular elementary school, and when it's time for science, you get on a bus and you go to science. And it's right across from the lagoon. It's a beautiful center, and they all go there and learn. And every student in Martin County has that experience. So they get a little hands on, they can have a little walkway to get to the lagoon, a private, spot on the lagoon. And I think that's pretty amazing that they have that access, right?
I think that's actually something I forgot to have a circle back on when the Raiders came in.
Okay.
Mita,
Mm-hmm.
my wife, is one of our mods here. She just reminded me. Uh, could you do a quick review? We covered what One Lagoon is, but uh,
Yes.
what is the Indian River Lagoon for some of the Raiders that because again we're a global community. We got people from Australia,
Yes.
from all over.
Yes.
So we do actually have a few people in the chat from Florida. But
Okay.
I think it's just a
Yes.
handful of us. So for those people that are
Yes.
not, what is the Indian River Lagoon and what is the importance of it as an ecosystem?
So the Indian River Lagoon is a 156-mile long estuary system on the east coast of southeast coast of Florida. It is not a river, even though it says Indian River. It is a lagoon, and it's an estuary. And that means that there's brackish water, there's a barrier island, there's a channel going from the ocean to the river, all the way across to Lake Okeechobee. So it's a very unique system. There are wetlands, uplands. It's one of the most biodiverse systems in the country. And what else can I say? There's no true flushing. That's why it's not a river. And because it's so significant, um, there's an independent special district of the state that has been created. That's us, to make sure that this special system is protected.
I had to do some digging to find a picture of it just
Hmm
for reference here, y'all. This is a
Yes.
map of the IRL.
There should be like a boundary map somewhere. There's 6 counties, 38 cities, and about 1.6 million people within the watershed.
And so that
And
starts at what, like Jupiter?
Yeah, down at Jupiter Inlet, all the way to Ponce Inlet in Volusia.
Okay.
And it's 156 miles long. It's one of the longest
Which
estuary
Volusia's, that's
programs.
past Canaveral, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
hmm
Okay. I'm still getting my bearings. We've been here.
No, yep. And me too. Me too, because I didn't know that Mosquito Lagoon is also inside of Indian River Lagoon. It's a different system, Banana Lagoon. And there's significant differences, but because of the landscape up there. You've got a Canaveral National Seashore. You've got, Space Coast up there. That's different. The population is different there than it is maybe down in the Jupiter Martin area, where it's heavily populated on the coast with high rises and, a
Mm,
lot of property right on the lagoon. So you can see how the difference from north to south is. And right now we have three community engagement coordinators. For the South, we have one Heather in the center and another Jesse up north. And we all have
okay.
different backgrounds. We all kind of do different things, but we engage in our communities about the work.
Speaking of doing different things,
Mhm.
actually, let me snooze this ad that's coming up here again. I've got one left. Um, you mentioned a podcast that you do, and this is on
Yes,
behalf of One Lagoon, right? You want to do
yes,
tell us about that real quick?
yeah. We have
So
one
I don't know why I said
lagoon,
real quick.
one.
Take your time.
We have a podcast that has kind of expanded since we expanded our team, and it's called One Lagoon, One Voice, and it's where our staff talk to different professionals and learn about the work they do. Sometimes it's us talking to our friends. Sometimes we're talking to someone that we're kind of like trying to question and figure things out. One of my favorite episodes was talking to my dad about the importance of exposure to nature, to getting people to care, and it kind
Absolutely.
of just it it was just me and my dad. Hey, Dad, I got this job because you made me scuba dive and snorkel when I was younger, and you were my chaperone when my school went to the Everglades for a week, and making sure that I was outside and doing all these things and not littering, and that's how I was able to, be a person who cared enough to be able to voice the work that's going on here and get this job. But then my boss is talking to Charlie Sembler, one of the fifth generation fishermen in the lagoon, about Sembler Dock and their family and how the estuaries changed over time. Or we're talking to Coastal Connections about oyster farming. So there's a lot of different um, ways that we want to talk to all of our partners and give them a platform to share what they're doing. But
Hmm.
also, I think it's important to kind of just talk to them, not just like from scientist to scientist, like, hey, so what is an oyster farm? What is water farming? Why do we do that? And to just have those type of conversations is really imperative when we're wanting everyone to learn and not just sharing it from one university to another.
As a
Yeah.
quick offshoot, you might already
Yes.
know this, but I
Hmm.
remember part of Dr. Ajemian's study with the shark repellents was using those magnets to also repel stingrays, like spotted eagle rays, from oyster farms.
See.
How cool is that? Like, so that's a thing. That's a thing they could do, and apparently they did have success with that. But just a little, this one specific like $70 plastic magnet that you can use as a fishing weight was overstimulating the electroreceptors of sharks, and so when that trails behind the fish you've caught, the shark kind of waves off and loses interest. And they tried this with bags of oysters, and had the same type of success rate.
And
So
I believe that's because they're talking with their other science friends about other things that have happened. Look what
and that, a
happened when we
big
did
part of that
this.
too was that in this case you had marine scientists and fishermen who like fishing guides who are out there in the water every day working hand in
Yes.
hand. And it's crazy. I run into way more people than I thought I would that just like don't want to hear any science, will spread the misinformation like, oh, there's too many sharks, we should cull them, and this and that and the other, and think that, you know, got all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories like IUCN is just lying to get more money for science funding. It's things like that.
That's
But
an easy one, right? That's a lot of people like to go to that one.
yeah, but at the end of the day, I think when they realize that like the divers and advocates like myself and the scientists and them, we all want the same thing. That some
Right.
really amazing things can get done. Like we at the end of the day, I really believe we all want the same thing. That's more fish, cleaner water. And
Yes.
I don't see why that's such a hard thing for everybody to agree on. But then when they finally are able to, when you find people that are able to collaborate in that capacity, really cool things like this study can come from that. Like the other side of that, I'm actually not this Thursday, but the 19th, which is next Thursday, I think. Yeah, I'm doing a study with, I'm doing a interview with Stephen Kaijura, who did the other side of the study on that, which is
Okay. Oh,
the
yeah, cool.
commercial longline fisheries. So they have a different device that's nothing to do with magnets. This one is a piece of zinc touching a piece of graphite, two
Hmm.
metals, one a little bit less noble than the other, and when you touch those together and submerge it in seawater, it essentially makes an enzymatic battery. That it causes corrosion, and the shedding of ions coming out of that makes a weak electromagnetic field around that metal, and that does the same thing as the magnet. It's going to overstimulate their senses, and they saw 60 to 70% less shark bycatch on the long
Oh,
lines they tested this on. So I'm really, really interested to see what other data he can give us about that, in addition to what I was able to dig up on the paper.
yeah.
But yeah, see, this is another case of like commercial fisheries who like people in my camp, the conservation advocacy camp, are like, oh, that's the devil. But you know, like if they work with the scientists, we can at least make processes we have better
Yes.
and have better outcomes with it, like avoiding non-target species, both for the benefit of the health of people, less mercury in our food,
Right.
and less damage to the ecosystem. So I'm all for seeing that kind of collaboration.
That's the only way. It's really the only way. And nature tells us, right? We need biodiversity in nature. We need everybody at the table in order to achieve
Yeah.
success.
So with your
That's what we do.
how long have you been doing the podcast? And
Ooh, we've been doing so. The podcast was in existence before we started. It was a little
okay,
dry back then. I'll say that. And then
it
when
always
our
starts out that way.
but we have been doing it for about 2.5 years now, and we have maybe 30 episodes, 28 episodes, and we're talking about oyster and shoreline restoration, mosquito impoundments, um, how certain counties are doing things,
What's a
what's going
mosquito
on in Martin
impoundment?
County. Oh my goodness.
I've never
I
heard
am
that
not
term before.
I am not the mosquito impoundment person.
That's
That's
okay.
a really no, but it's I'll tell you what. If you didn't know, this area used to be like people used to die from the mosquitoes. The frogmen. When the frogmen were here, was it training for the Navy?
Oh,
How
okay.
right? Like this area was so heavily populated, it was dense with pineapples. It was just mosquito town, right? So they've created these areas where I'm gonna call it a marsh, but please don't quote me on the proper terms. But it's an area where
I'm
they
not a
create
geologist. I wouldn't be able to.
they create their environment for the mosquitoes to be in a certain place so that they can kind of all go
So they would try to
here. And
create an area that's more attractive for the mosquitoes. They're trying to
yes,
zone the mosquitoes.
no mosquitoes. And my back when my dad grew up here, they used to just spray mosquito um, repellent out in a truck and drive
They
it
do
down the
here.
neighborhood.
They did it last year twice.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize that they still do it.
Oh yeah, they did. They did that in Texas, in Dallas, when I was living there too.
Yeah, it's wild. But there's some new science, and I'm going to. I'm sorry that I don't know about that. I would have
Oh,
read
you're
up on
good.
it a little bit more. But here's this: we have an episode 19, all about mosquito impoundments, and
Nice.
that's the important thing. Every local government has a BMAP, which is a best management practices that they have to adhere to, and that's where all these things come into play. The government has rules. Everybody doesn't always follow them, but when you do, all of these things are done. You have wastewater, you have floating wetlands and stormwater treatment facilities that are working properly. You have mosquito impoundments. You have maintenance on these things. In Fort Pierce, we're moving the wastewater treatment off of the island way out west. That's a $20 million, probably more than that, multi-million dollar project that's been in the works for 25 years, right? And the mindset changed from nobody wants to live on an island, put the wastewater out there, to now everybody's driving by like, why would they ever put a wastewater
In
treatment
this
plant on
environment.
the island? right? Because before there was nothing but mosquitoes out there, and it was pretty much uninhabitable.
I kind of had that thought the first time I drove down A1A and saw the nuclear power plant. Like, what?
That's a scary thing. It's a scary
Yeah,
thing.
it's fine. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share that. I mean, you guys are on Spotify, Apple, or Spotify, iTunes, YouTube is going to
YouTube,
be the one I think
yes,
everybody's going to have access to. So I'm going to drop
yeah,
the YouTube
mm-hmm,
link here in chat for everybody.
yes.
That if you want to check out their podcast episodes a little
We
bit
have
more, I
great
highly suggest it.
conversations. Yeah, we have really great conversations with some really great people who have dedicated their lives to the work. The CEO of our organization, our executive director, Dr. Dwayne DeFries, has been working in the Lagoon since 1979.
Wow.
So he's seen it from a long time ago and has, worked his career in protecting it and making sure that everyone knows what they need to know. And it's because of people like that and making sure that this organization runs properly and that we continue to get the right people up and have the conversations with the right people. And
Absolutely.
sometimes where it goes wrong is where people start to focus on just what they want instead of focusing on the plan. And I
Just
think
that
that's
for
where
my
we
own curiosity, did this
yeah.
person, since they've been around here for a long time, did
Hmm.
they have anything to say about what the water quality was like here then? I'm always curious to hear that from people who've been in this area for a long time.
Oh man, everyone that I speak to, especially Dwayne and all of his friends, he's an old surfer. Um, they remember the grass being long and tall and walking through it and being able to see down to the bottom
Hmm.
for a long way. So the water clarity was the thing that people loved so much. It's called the Treasure Coast, not only because of the treasure out in the ocean, right? But it was a definite, it was protected as well. And there's a large coalition of citizens back in the 80s who made Fort Pierce State Park a state park because they were about to develop it.
Oh, wow.
So, and because of the water clarity, they were like, look, this is special. You can't just, sell it off to the highest bidder. So I also commend St. Lucie County for 25, 30 years fighting to make
Oh,
sure that we didn't overdevelop our island you know, and invite so many people here to where we forgot about the importance and the special piece of nature we have.
yeah. Speaking of this area, this will be something that is probably more near and dear to you, given it's in Fort Pierce. It's close by,
Okay.
but
Hmm.
you may or may not be able to speak to it from a one lagoon standpoint. I'm not sure because this
Okay.
erosion is something that's really big on people's mind right now, to do with dredging or having brought in you know what is it like milled sand from a mine. That's something I've taken my drone out to kind of document the state of the beaches on the south side of Fort Pierce Jetty
Yes.
for about
Hmm.
a year now, and
Okay. Ooh, I would
it
like to
is
see that
crazy to
footage.
see the journey that's gone through. Do you guys have any involvement with any sort of like consultations or anything, or
We
is that or
don't.
not
That
because it's on the outside of the
well, yeah, that's the city and that's the Army Corps of Engineers. It's
yeah.
another kind of group of governments that don't really talk to each other, and we're not a part of that. But yeah, it's a big topic of
We need another
conversation
org
because
like One Lagoon for the whole outside coastline. That would be
it's like
great.
everybody needs it. Well, I'll tell you what, okay. I'm at work, guys. I'm the government, but there is an office. FAU, Florida Atlantic University,
Uh-huh.
has just opened an office of ocean economy.
Okay.
And I do like when things are governed from a certain point with all a plan, right? And I would say that at this point, that seems like it could be an opportunity to attack or address those issues,
Hmm.
or at least a great place to go yell at the top and figure out how to get down. I'm a proponent of being pushed down to where you need to go. But the Office of Ocean Economy, I think, could probably have a lot of conversations around erosion and the benefits, but also listening to the scientists that are our partners at FAU, Harbor Branch. They're doing all of that work, right? So, While it's not our purview and maybe we won't fund projects on beach erosion, our partners and friends are working on some of those things. So
Yeah, I figured it was probably not in the jurisdiction, given it's not in the lagoon, but it's
yeah,
so close by. I figured I'd ask. But yeah, that's something we've looked at a lot here, just because it's. I think another opportunity where more collaboration from different groups and education is going to be huge, because
yes,
you've got business owners on the coast who are worried about the erosion happening and yelling at the government to do something, and then they'll do something, and that thing ends up just making it worse. Like whether it be dredging or trucking in sand that's not got the right nutrients, etc.
right.
So, yeah, I would love to see more collaboration, like the kind of things that you guys facilitate, uh, helping the city of Fort Pierce to, and other places, I'm sure, all over Florida, to
Oh, absolutely.
get out
It's a
ahead of
problem
issues
everywhere.
like that, because erosion's a very hot topic here.
It's a hot topic here, and I think the people who've lived here for so long, it's dramatic
Mm.
when you go out there and see the
Yeah, the first time
erosion.
I
But
saw it was like a 10-foot drop off.
I've never been told not to go from the street. Like there's a sign that says like "Don't come over here," and I'm like, "What do you mean don't come this way?" And
Yeah,
I'm
where the
jumping over
berm
it because I
used to
like to
be,
follow
now
the
there's
rules. And I'm
just a
like, "Oh,
sign.
I guess I won't go there."
Yeah.
Yeah, beach erosion, and we live in Florida, and I think it's important for us to kind of understand the topography of the state and how it's changed for a long time. It was much wider a long, long, long time ago, right? So, understanding the how what Florida actually is and taking that into consideration, and also being realistic about how we grow. And I think all of those things have to be discussed. We can't really flower over those things when we talk about erosion. We can't not talk about how much money areas make when their beaches are beautiful and with fresh white sand.
Hmm.
I've got friends. I don't not go to South Beach in Miami, right? I grew up there, but when my friends come to visit, they're like, "Why would we go to that beach when there's chairs everywhere and all this? It looks perfect. Where here, it's natural. You go out and it feels real good, and you're not competing with everybody's beach chair. We want to protect that, but we also have to listen to the scientists in order to make sure. But we also, on top of that, have to stay within the guidelines of the Army Corps of Engineers.
Hmm.
So those are, you know, it's tricky. It's tricky. Um, I
That's a
do,
lot of cast to
yeah.
herd. I'm telling you, that's I
It
can't
it
even
is.
imagine,
It
because it's not
is
just that that's different groups. I mean, they're dramatically different ways of thinking. You know what I mean?
absolutely, and
I
it
don't
takes a
know.
certain
Of course, you know
person.
what I mean. You're in the middle of it.
It takes a certain type of personality, I believe, and that's why I really, give a big high five to my boss Dwayne, because he's a cool guy. He understands the politics. He understands, how to be in a room with politicians. He understands the science. He is a scientist. So I'm not going to say that it's something that just going to pop up and happen everywhere. It does take that specific effort to know that it's a unique role to be in. I really don't think every scientist going to say that I'm going to change how these policymakers think. That's not how it's going to go. It takes a concerted effort. And I think that we do a really great job over the past 10 years um, at what we do. And we're continuing to be funded from the state of Florida and the federal government thus far. So I think that as long as we continue to be successful, um, we'll continue to. And what success is for us is a healthy lagoon. And so we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and it's really exciting to see how you guys do that. We actually just caught another raid right now from Uncle
Ooh,
Ryan
ooh,
TV.
ooh.
What's up, Uncle Ryan? How you doing? This is a good friend of mine. He is not my actual Uncle Ryan, but that is his name. Welcome in, Raiders. How you doing? How was your stream? Ryan, it's been too long. It's good to see you. Tell us
Uncle
all
Ryan
about it,
is
man.
back.
Don't be shy. If there's anything you want to drop in the chat to share with the community, please be my guest. But speaking of guests, tonight we are interviewing Caleta Scott from a local organization here in the Treasure Coast called One Lagoon. One Lagoon, if I'm trying to summarize it, let's see if I'm getting better at this, is a
Yes.
government organization that is has the priority of preserving the estuary ecosystem here and coordinating different moving parts like the government, scientists, and the Army Corps of Engineers in some cases, which has a lot to do with our waterways and how they're used. Did I do a good job?
Yeah, I would take out specifically the Army Corps, but more so like the scientist community, our citizenry as well as our policymakers.
Right. Okay. And what
Yeah,
what
all the
what's the
stakeholders.
citizen part of that? Was that the outreach and education stuff?
Oh, yeah, it could be nonprofit organizations, you know, and that's just HOAs are a part of that. It's really everyone who, whether they know it or not, has a vested interest in a healthy lagoon. And I look at that as everybody who lives here, right? People move here because it's so beautiful. And if we don't protect it, they're going to start to not want to move here anymore. If they start seeing harmful algal blooms, and here's this, if we don't talk to the realtors about the science, we may not help them sell the homes, right? So I've been trying to get in contact with realtor groups because they should know about the lagoon, right? As they're selling the beautiful homes right on the lagoon, they should let the people know about how how they may not want to do a hard seawall, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may want to do a living shoreline, and how much that living shoreline in your backyard can enhance your property values, right? Just something like that might just get a wife to say, "Oh, I'm going to contact the master naturalists, or excuse me, the master gardeners, and have them come do an assessment of our property." And then you never know what can happen. And that's how we start to make sure everybody knows what their resources are, and make sure everyone knows that everybody's doing their part. Know your role. Are you a scientist? Are you a facilitator? Or are you a part of the community who needs to know better?
Well, could you give an example of a living shoreline? Somebody asked, "Is that like oyster reefs and seagrass?"
Well, there's hold on one moment. The living shoreline really is kind of the antithesis of what this hardened seawall is, right? So
Right. Whereas a seawall is
instead
a
of
big plank or vinyl literal wall.
yes, instead what we do is we create a soft edge to the environment that naturally protects it. So we do things like oyster reefs further away from the shoreline, and that helps with wave attenuation. And then we'll plant some seagrass here and some other grasses to help with creating filter feeders and getting the environment clean and the water so that there's different spaces for other animals to live. The oyster shells that stabilize the shorelines, and that's a part of those reefs, and it reduces
And
the
then
erosion.
mangrove
We make
trees, of
plant
course, too.
Right, then we're going to plant some mangroves there as well. We're going to plant some red ones here, and then we may plant some white ones further in the back. So now, instead of a wall, you've got this natural progression of things that after 2, 3 seasons, it's now a full blown, shoreline protection. When I first moved to Fort Pierce, we planted, and this is an older technology, but we put inside of some old riprap, we planted oyster bags, right? We
Okay.
put some right and right. So right now, if you're at Fort Pierce at the Riverwalk by the Manatee Center, all of that's grown up. All of that was done in 2014.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and the project that's of those barrier islands right by the marina, after hurricanes, there were two bad hurricanes, Francis and Jean. I
Hmm.
wasn't living here then, but in '05 and '06, after that, the marina was torn to shreds. The Army Corps of Engineer came in, built these islands, and now there's mangroves and so much sea life, so many shorebirds there. And the next hurricane that came, the entire marina was completely protected. So when you let nature do its thing without it, impacting it too much, and letting it be clean and letting it do its thing, it's going to protect us. It's when we try to, tear the things out so we can make it look prettier. People want to cut down all their mangroves so they can have a view, and then when the storm comes and they have damage, they're like, "Wah," and then insurance drops you. It's like, it's this whole problem. You shouldn't have cut your mangroves down, right?
This is actually a topic that hits home with us quite literally. In fact,
Yes.
my wife was asking in the chat, but before I tell you the question, basically the long and short of it was
Okay.
we moved here from Texas, and I, studied up as quickly as I could. Because obviously
Hmm.
I'm here, I come here to do environmental outreach stuff. I want to make sure I learn as much as I can about the ecosystem we
Yes.
live in and the adjacent ones as possible, as quickly as possible. And so our house is on a canal, and
Okay.
the previous it was built in the 70s, and the previous
Hmm.
owner made their own seawall. They had a dock put in, but then they basically just made a seawall out of like pylons or pilings, like, and bolted them together, tied it to a dead man post. And so that hasn't fared so well to the test of time, as you can imagine. It is completely collapsed on one side. I think a matter of time before the other side probably goes. So we have been racking our brains since we got here as to if we don't want to put an actual seawall here, because we have neighbors that don't have them. They just have lush grass going to the edge of it. What do we do
Hmm.
to mitigate this? So Mita in the chat is my wife, and she said, "Are there any government grants for homeowners to plant a natural seawall?" Which
Not
actually, that's not a
government
bad
grant.
idea.
It's not a bad idea, but what
But
there
everybody would do
are,
it.
everybody would do it, and I think there are ways that that can be done, right? Partnerships with certain organizations. So these are shout outs and recommendations to reach out, not necessarily saying that they will do this, but
Hmm.
UF IFAS, Martin and or St. Lucie County. There's a great gentleman named Vincent Encomio, and they can come to your house and consult with you on a living shoreline. Now they
Institute
may,
for Food and Agricultural Sciences.
yes, University of Florida, go Gators. I'm a Gator.
All
They
right.
have an extension office in every county with people to help you with horticulture or different ag science topics. And our local folks are very helpful. They're working on a with a gentleman who lives on the drive. Now the difference is that's kind of like directly on the Indian River Lagoon, so there's some additional benefits. But at the very least, he could give you some guidance um, on what to do, and there may be some probably can connect you with some people who have access to small grants, right?
That'd be
It's
cool.
not
I mean, even
necessarily.
if even if I could do something with that to like, oh, here's the solution we arrived on, and I'll make a video about it, and maybe somebody else somewhere else can learn about that as well. So I can't be the
Absolutely.
only person dealing with that. So yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for mentioning that. I'll check it. I'll check it out.
And that's how things start, right? That's my brain always goes to how I like me to, I always try to go to how can the government pay for it? Always. And so I'm like, well, who's, what are you in the city or the county? Like knowing those things about what municipality you're in makes a big difference, right? They may have a lot of funding for stormwater or something, and that can connect to stormwater, right? It could connect to, there's a lot of different ways that you can get something from the, but if you just have to know where to go. So I'm happy to, make some suggestions or connections for you guys. And
Thank
and
you.
and that could start a program with the city. Because in Port St. Lucie, I will say that they have a nice neighborhood program because Port St. Lucie was kind of more so made like a development, so the neighborhoods aren't as organic. And what it takes is somebody like you coming into town, going, "Hey, how can I can do this?" and asking that question, and they may start a community meeting to ask different people in different neighborhoods, "Hey, is this a problem?" And then they may get funding to do because they have to get funding and they can give funding.
Hmm.
So I'm always interested in trying to pull something together like that to help the citizens, right? Like, because that's how it's supposed to go.
And Sparky in the chat here had a good comment as well. Said, "So true. Nature is a great protector from floods too, and that's actually a big part of why a lot of us care so much about the health of the seagrass, the coral, the mangrove forests, all that stuff. Because not
Yeah.
only is it habitat for a massive amount of biodiversity and like crucial breeding ground for a lot of species, including several sharks,
Yes.
but it does in fact slow the wind and the waves down for those of us that live on the inside of the lagoon.
Right. Yeah. The watershed is vast, right? Like we're all connected. You can be on a if you're on a canal, you're connected,
Hmm.
right? Like if you throw something in your canal, it's going to get there at
Yeah.
some point. It's going to go through, and the more people that know that, and know what's happening, when people know that won't that it that the land provides water filtration, when people know that, they may not put trash on the ground, right?
Right.
So I think that's more in communicating what's happening and why we love it so much, and that it's there's a value to that. It's $28.3 billion annually, the value of the Indian River Lagoon. You know, that's a lot of services that take place. It's a lot of people that are doing a lot of work. That's the coastal protection at $250 million a year. That's just the lagoon doing the lagoon. That's the value
Wow.
of it. Commercial fishing is $3.7 million a year.
And when
So
you say commercial fishing, are we talking about like large scale industrial fishing, or also like small town commercial fishing, fisheries of like, maybe a mom and
those
pop, and
are
that's their.
that's separate. That's more
Okay.
in a 6.8 billion, much larger category, right? And that goes along with recreational fishing, boating, and shoreline activity. That's kind of along in there. Those
That goes in that bucket.
smallmouth.
Okay, I got you.
Hmm.
So
But the
I didn't talk to you at all when we first started this about how long you were comfortable going with. It is almost 10 o'clock.
Oh, it's almost 10 o'clock. Who
So
look?
I go till 11, so there's no rush, but we can wrap it up if you need to. I just wanted to let you know what time it was, and I guess ask if there was anything that you wanted to add, or we could continue talking about the podcast. I had some questions about the last episode.
I'm happy to answer questions about the last episode. I think maybe about 10 more minutes or so till about
Yeah,
10ish.
sure.
I'm happy to stay on and answer whatever questions. And I appreciate you inviting me on to kind of talk about
Absolutely.
the people, because that's what I think it's important too. The people doing the work. Um,
Something
doing
I've
the
noticed this year and towards the end of last year is that doing doing this sort of science communication, I noticed that I was wanting to spend more time getting involved in
Yeah.
more so like the political side of things. So when like a bill comes in that looks like it's going to make it harder to advocate for wildlife or our health or whatever, just making sure that sort of thing is on my radar. Seeing how I can get involved, whether it's calling reps or working with certain other organizations that are doing advocacy
Hmm.
for that, or whatever it may be,
Yes.
volunteering. And people in the chat seemed really interested in that effort and learning about how they can do that in their local communities.
Yes.
And especially something like this, like I said, like the more voices we have educating in terms of the environment, the better, in my opinion, whether it's a government organization or
Hmm.
not.
Right.
So I think the podcast is really cool because and this whole talk we're having right now is to show people like, sure, maybe it's not relevant for them because they don't live on the Indian River Lagoon, but these sorts of groups exist, and there
Everywhere.
are unique biomes like this all over the planet, and we might all live 10, 20 minutes from one and not really appreciate its significance.
Hmm.
But the more you dig, the more you find out these places exist and that there are people watching over them and, striving to better understand them and protect them. And I think that's huge. But,
And
go
I
ahead.
just want to add that the people at these places are the magic. And I think
Hmm.
that sometimes we kind of get caught up in that policy part and the people who we see on TV. And that's not the person who's actually pushing the button at the wastewater treatment facility, or the one who's actually testing the water, and
Yep.
or the one who's noticing that there's a change in the system, right? And I think that's where it's important to know, if you live in a town with a river, you probably have a river keeper, something that simple. Like, we have an Indian River Keeper. We have a couple of them. There's an organization in Martin County called Rivers Coalition. That's the advocacy arm for waters in Martin County. And guess who supports them? They have their meetings at City Hall, at the city of Stewart.
Wow.
So there's really, I always start high and get pushed down. Will I ask you to email your mayor to ask a question? Because guess what? The mayor will find out. It's a public record. Yeah. Because what she'll do is she's going to get that message and say, hey, I got this citizen who asked this. Can you respond to them? Or, and then here's this, maybe that government worker's gonna be like, darn it. But guess what? They're gonna now have to do it because it got pushed down from who? The mayor. That's always my
The
approach. Go
conversation's
by
getting started. Yeah.
starting that conversation because they have to tell you, and it's kind of understanding how systems work. I always like people to know that there's a water management area or a water management district. Inside of districts, there are water management areas. I just learned today that there are 81 different management areas in Florida. Wow. So, inside of our water management districts, you can go and find, and in certain systems, and I'm not talking about the lagoon, I was just in Bradenton and I was looking on the map and I was like, who knew that there was a Big Bend water management area? What do they do? And now I start noticing all the government signs on the trucks and I can see the buildings and I'm like, wow, I'm near all these springs. My parents live in Ocala. There are tons of different stations for the management of the springs there. I'm the kind of person who's going to stop off and go into the office and say, hey, what happens here? What are you guys doing here? Right? And guess what? I'm a citizen. We're citizens. We can do that. We may interrupt them, but we do have that right to know what's going on. And I always say, ask the question. There is no dumb question.
And that seems like a great way for a podcast to be born. So on this most recent episode you guys had about the oyster
Yes.
farming, do
Mm-hmm.
you want to give us a rundown of what that was like, and that maybe people will get from that an idea of what to expect on the podcast?
Uh, I'm so sorry. I missed that one. I was
Oh,
at a
okay. Well,
conference,
just the last
so I
one you
haven't watched it.
participated in is fine.
But what they're talking about is how the local genetics make oysters stronger
Uh-huh.
and better suited for Florida's hot and salty waters.
Versus like
Um,
importing oysters.
yes, yes, and how they create they're talking about how they create the habitats for the farming and different challenges that they face with predators. I'm kind of just reading the breakdown of it, but
Hmm.
it's a fun conversation with Jessie, who's up north, and this is with someone who she's actually friends with. It's Sam Walsh of Shark Bait Oysters. Excuse me, Shark Bite Oysters.
Okay.
Um, and Nicolette Mariano of Treasure Coast Shellfish. So two organizations that have been working in the area for a long time. They don't work together, but they're talking about the different challenges that they have and how it impacts consumerism here in the Treasure Coast, right? Because our seafood economy is big and that has gone on a huge decline. So how
Hmm.
much can we learn about our system through listening to these, these professionals here with Shark Bite and Treasure Coast Shellfish? So it's a good way to talk and to listen and learn directly from the people who are doing the work. Sometimes we talk to the high level scientists, but I love it when we talk to the person who's actually out there in the
Right.
water
So you're getting the
doing the
one side as
research.
well. This is our industry, and we look at it from this business standpoint. Whereas you have an environmental scientist who's going to say, okay, what for things to be sustainable, the X, Y, Z has to happen. Here's all this data.
Yes.
I imagine there's some really interesting conversations to be had on both sides there.
Yes, there's a program called oh my goodness, Jesse, my teammate, actually created the program where restaurants donate their oyster shells for restoration projects.
Ah,
It's got a cool name, and I'm so sorry that I
I
totally.
got. We might have done something with them once. Actually, there's a brewery in Fort Pierce that we went to that had
Mhm.
they did an event where everybody could come and like zip tie
Were you
oyster
at the oyster
shells
matting event
to a
at
mat.
Sailfish?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
first. That Yep, I was at that. A friend of mine was
I
one
was
of the scientists who was organizing it. Laura is her name.
Laura Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the one of the first events that I did. And I
Okay.
posted about it on our website. And let me tell you, we got so much backlash from that. And it gave me like
Really?
social media anxiety. Yeah. Because what happens is you got to change with the science. Back then, just those 2.5, 3 years ago, doing zip ties on a plastic mat was just fine, right?
Mm-hmm. But now
Until
we're adding more microplastics to the waterway, and we have to think
it
about
was
that.
an outrage. That post had so many people like, what are you doing putting all that plastic? Now, there's two benefits to this event. We were getting people to learn about oysters and drinking beer and having a nice time, right? Also, we were doing something that was going to actually benefit the lagoon. And so that's why it's so important to make sure we have a lot of voices at the table, um, so that we can make sure that we change with the science, right? That
Yeah, and
we,
and getting those people connected to talk to each other is hugely important too. Like, actually, I'll tell you an interesting story. This is random offshoot, but somebody mentioned
great.
earlier uh, microplastics in the chat, and
Mm,
you referenced a few times water waste management, wastewater management. It's actually kind of funny. A friend of mine manages the nearby wastewater plant,
okay.
and I just sent him a video today. This is just like a random interesting fact I learned today.
Okay.
I'm going to
Hmm.
look more into the science behind what they're doing with this, but apparently they bioengineered an algae that you could have in a few settling tanks at the water filtration plant,
Okay.
and it will break down microplastics so that you can then just scoop that algae off, and it can actually be repurposed into plant-based plastics.
Something else.
So that imagine that, like, take finding a way to have a plant take those microplastics out of your water, because our wastewater is one of the hugest aggregation places for microplastics. So
Yes.
that's a whole heck of a lot of it that's not going to get sprayed out on lawns and dump more microplastics into waterways. So
Right.
who knows? I might be an old man before that sort of thing actually goes mainstream, but I hope not. And it's kind of cool to see that that sort of thing's happening. So I definitely sent that to him. Like, you should probably look this up. I don't know if it's real or not, but you'll know somebody who'll know.
I think it's important to continue having those conversations, right? And continuing to bring those innovators to the table, because we can't just keep doing it like we used to. We used to dump the dump everything right into the lagoon,
Hmm.
right? So we have to continue to listen to the innovators and test it out and see it's worth it. And there are some governments who are willing to invest in those type of technologies and say, hey, why don't we try it out in a little area? Why don't we get a stormwater pond and see if it really works? Or let's do it in this tank. IRSC has a wave pool on campus in their Stewart, is it Stewart or Port St. Lucie, one of their campuses, and they've allowed a number of our partners to use that to test environments and things. So it's like you got to try it. I
I
think
think
that's
just based solely on the fact that, well, the idea that the algae could then be repurposed as something that profits them, that gives them profit, is huge. Because now
that's
it's solving a problem for you, and it's potentially offsetting your costs too, which is that's pretty awesome. Anyway,
yeah,
that's a bit of a
finding
rabbit
things that
hole.
can mimic nature. That I think it's great, right? I
Yeah,
want them to keep on working on that
yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. So I don't want to keep you too late. We are past 10 now, but if before we go for the night, is there anything, any message you want to give to anybody? Any stuff you want to promote? The floor is yours.
Well, I want to thank you so much for giving me the platform to talk about my role in the government that is protecting the lagoon. And I want to give a shout out to an organization that I am on the board of. It's called Little Growers Inc. It's a youth centered urban agriculture organization, and they're focusing on projects that promote community food security, sustainability,
Well, what's the name again? I'll
and
drop the link in the chat.
sorry, Little Growers Inc.
Oh, you
They're on
told me about these guys.
Instagram. Yeah, they started off as an organization that was fighting for food insecurity, and now they're making an integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system. So we started talking about it's a food desert in the hood, and that those people got energized and educated. Now they have weather stations in their homes so they can be a part of the climate conversation. They're building this aquaculture system. The students are getting jobs and careers in green spaces, or what I call it was blue jobs. So I like to support an organization that is taking a community or groups of communities and youth and showing them that they have a place and showing them how they belong and teaching them that they have a voice. So I love Little Growers. I'm the secretary. I provide that kind of capacity for them to go and do the work, because sometimes nonprofits, they do the best work, but they don't know how to organize, and some of that hard work is it keeps them from doing the work they can. So anyway, I love Little Growers and want to shout them out. They're doing a lot of great work in the Indian River Lagoon. They're based in Melbourne and Palm Bay. So based right out of Brevard. Um, and I love them. So I just want to give a shout out. And
That's awesome.
I,
Thank you for doing so.
yeah, I just care about people. And I think that my final message is just keep on learning and keep your heart open,
Yeah, stay
right?
curious, my friends.
Yeah, stay curious, my friends. And hope I didn't ramble on too much about nothing, but I thank you for inviting me.
No,
And
I'm so glad you came. This was great. Thank you so
yeah,
much. And we kind of threw it together last minute compared to what
yeah,
I had in mind, but it worked out great. This has been awesome, and I'd love to do it again sometime if you want. And if you wanted to get together to do something with your podcast as well, I'd be
yes, absolutely.
thrilled.
I think it's important the many ways that we can communicate science, right? And
Absolutely. And on that note, I think I'm going to go ahead and get things rounded out here and find us a community to go share the love with and raid all these beautiful people over to. But
yes,
thank you again, Kalita, for joining us tonight.
thanks, guys, everybody, all the Raiders. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us as we learn about One Lagoon. It's kind of nice to see that the government isn't always the bad guy, right? No, it's. I think it's really cool to see that there are organizations like that. That their whole purpose for being here is not make sure this place is still profitable, but make sure that this place is still livable and actually a sustainable ecosystem, and protecting the biodiversity that lives there, which we benefit from. And we shouldn't have to make that argument, but here we are.